I never thought I would find myself in a long-distance relationship. When Jake and I first met at a coffee shop in Seattle, it felt like the universe had conspired to bring us together. We spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing our dreams. It was a whirlwind romance that blossomed over the summer, but as the leaves began to change, so did our circumstances. I had to return to my university in New York, while Jake stayed in Seattle to pursue his career in graphic design. We promised to make it work, believing that love could bridge the miles between us. At first, it was exhilarating. We would spend hours on video calls, our faces illuminated by the soft glow of our screens. I would wake up to sweet messages from him, and he would send me pictures of his latest art projects. I felt connected to him in a way that I had never experienced before. But as the months rolled on, the excitement began to wane, replaced by a gnawing sense of loneliness. The time zone difference made it difficult to find moments to connect, and the physical distance felt like an insurmountable barrier. I tried to stay positive, reminding myself that this was just a phase. I focused on my studies, threw myself into my social life, and kept busy. But there were nights when I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wishing I could feel his arms around me. I missed the little things, the way he would brush his fingers through my hair, the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his presence. I often found myself scrolling through our old photos, reliving those moments, and feeling a bittersweet ache in my chest. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Friday evening, and I had just finished a long week of classes. I was looking forward to our usual video call, but when I logged on, Jake seemed distant. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and there was a tension in his voice that I couldn't quite place. I asked him what was wrong, but he brushed it off, saying he was just tired from work. I wanted to believe him, but a nagging feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more changes. Jake was less available, often canceling our calls or responding late to my messages. I tried to be understanding, reminding myself that he was busy with his job. But the more he pulled away, the more my insecurities crept in. I began to wonder if he was losing interest in me, if the distance was too much for him to handle. I felt a mix of anger and sadness, grappling with the fear of losing someone I had grown to love so deeply. One evening, after a particularly frustrating week, I decided to confront him. I needed to know what was going on. I called him, my heart racing as I waited for him to pick up. When he finally answered, I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I took a deep breath and asked him directly if everything was okay between us. There was a long pause, and in that moment, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. "Can we talk about this later?" he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart sank. I knew then that something was terribly wrong. I pressed him, insisting that we needed to address it now. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke, and the words that came out shattered my world. "I've been seeing someone else." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, and for a moment, I couldn't process what he was saying. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. How could he do this to me? I had trusted him, believed in our love, and now it felt like everything was crumbling around me. Anger surged through me, mingling with a deep, aching sadness. I wanted to scream, to cry, to make him understand the pain he had caused. "Why?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. "How could you do this?" "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, his voice filled with regret. It just happened. I was lonely, and I met someone at work. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how to tell you." His words felt like daggers, each one piercing deeper into my heart. I felt ashamed for not being enough, for not being there when he needed me. The uncertainty of our relationship loomed over me like a dark cloud, and I couldn't shake the feeling of despair that settled in. I wanted to forgive him, to understand, but the betrayal felt too raw, too fresh. As we talked, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I wanted to lash out, to make him feel the pain he had inflicted on me, but I also wanted to understand. I wanted to know if, as we talked, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. I wanted to lash out, to make him feel the pain he had inflicted on me, but I also wanted to understand. I wanted to know if this new person meant anything to him, if I had been replaced in his heart. The questions swirled in my mind like a storm, each one more painful than the last. Do you love her? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I could hear the hesitation in his silence, and it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I don't know, he finally admitted, his voice cracking. It's complicated. I care about her, but I don't want to lose you. I never wanted to hurt you. His words felt like a feeble attempt to justify his actions, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger. You didn't think about me when you were with her, did you? I shot back, my voice rising. You didn't think about how this would affect us. I know, and I'm sorry, he said, his voice filled with regret. I was weak. I thought I could handle it, but I can't. I miss you, and I want to make this work. The conflicting emotions inside me were overwhelming. Part of me wanted to believe him, to cling to the hope that we could salvage what we had. But another part of me screamed that I deserved better, that I shouldn't have to fight for someone who had already betrayed my trust. I felt trapped in a whirlwind of pain and uncertainty, unsure of what to do next. I need time, I finally said, my voice trembling. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. You need to figure out what you want, and I need to figure out if I can forgive you. He agreed, and we ended the call with a heavy silence hanging between us. I felt a mix of relief and despair. I had taken a step back, but the uncertainty of our future loomed over me like a dark cloud. I spent the next few days in a haze, going through the motions of my life while my heart felt shattered. I couldn't concentrate on my studies, and my friends noticed the change in me. They tried to be supportive, but I felt like I was living in a bubble, isolated from the world around me. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with a range of emotions. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. I also felt ashamed for not being enough for him, for not being there when he needed me. The mixed feelings were suffocating, and I often found myself crying late at night, wishing things could go back to the way they were. I tried to distract myself by throwing myself into my studies and spending time with friends, but every moment felt tainted by the knowledge of Jake's betrayal. I would see couples walking hand in hand, and it would stab at my heart. I missed the intimacy we had shared, the connection that felt so real. I longed for his touch, his laughter, and the way he made me feel alive. But I also felt a growing sense of anger towards him for putting me in this position. One evening, as I sat in my room scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a picture of Jake with the other girl. They were smiling, their faces lit up with joy, and it felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't help but feel a wave of despair wash over me. How could he move on so easily? Did he even think about me when he was with her? The questions tormented me, and I felt a mix of anger and sadness bubbling to the surface. I decided to reach out to him, needing to know where we stood. I sent him a message, my heart racing as I waited for his response. When he finally replied, I could sense the tension in his words. He said he was confused, that he didn't know what he wanted. I felt a surge of frustration. How could he not know? How could he not see the pain he had caused? As the days turned into weeks, I found myself at a crossroads. I had to decide whether to fight for our relationship or to let go. The thought of losing him felt unbearable, but the thought of being with someone who had betrayed me was equally painful. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering between love and self-preservation. One night, I found myself sitting on my bed, staring at the wall, lost in thought. I felt a wave of temptation wash over me. I could reach out to him, tell him I missed him, and hope that he would choose me. But deep down, I knew that I needed to prioritize my own well-being. I couldn't allow myself to be a second choice, a fallback option when things got tough for him. The realization hit me hard, and I felt a mix of shame and determination. I had to be strong, even if it meant letting go of the person I loved. I spent the next few days in a state of introspection, trying to sift through my emotions and figure out what I truly wanted. I reached out to my best friend, Mia, who had been my rock throughout this tumultuous time. We met at our favorite cafe, a cozy little spot with mismatched furniture and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. As I sat across from her, I could see the concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, her eyes searching mine for answers. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. I'm so confused. Part of me wants to fight for Jake, but another part of me knows I deserve better. Mia nodded, her expression thoughtful. You have to think about what you want, not just what he wants. It's easy to get lost in someone else's needs, especially when you love them. But you have to prioritize yourself. Her words resonated with me, and I felt a flicker of hope. I realized that I had been so focused on Jake's feelings that I had neglected my own. I needed to reclaim my sense of self, to remember who I was outside of our relationship. I spent the next few days reflecting on my own needs and desires, trying to find clarity amidst the chaos. As I navigated this emotional landscape, I found myself grappling with the idea of forgiveness. Could I forgive Jake for what he had done? The thought of it felt like a double-edged sword. On one hand, I wanted to believe that love could conquer all, that we could rebuild our relationship stronger than before. On the other hand, I feared that forgiveness would mean accepting the pain he had caused and allowing him back into my life without consequences. I decided to take a step back from our conversations. I needed space to breathe, to think, and to heal. I told Jake that I needed time to process everything, and he seemed to understand, though I could sense the disappointment in his voice. I felt a pang of guilt for putting him through this, but I knew it was necessary for my own well-being. Days turned into weeks, and I focused on myself. I reconnected with friends, immersed myself in my studies, and even took up a new hobby, painting. It became a form of therapy for me, a way to express the emotions I couldn't put into words. Each brushstroke felt like a release, a way to channel my pain into something beautiful. I painted late into the night, losing myself in the colors and textures, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. But even as I found solace in my art, thoughts of Jake lingered in the back of my mind. I missed him, but I also felt a growing sense of anger towards him for putting me in this position. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, and it gnawed at me like a persistent ache. I often found myself wondering if he was still seeing the other girl, if he had moved on completely while I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered heart. One evening, as I was painting, I received a message from Jake. My heart raced as I opened it, a mix of anticipation and dread flooding through me. He expressed how much he missed me, how he was struggling to understand his feelings, and how he wanted to talk. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to reach out and comfort him, while another part screamed for me to protect myself. I took a deep breath and decided to respond. I miss you too, but I need more time. I can't just jump back into things without knowing where we stand. His reply was immediate, filled with a sense of urgency. I understand. I just want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. I've realized how much you mean to me. His words stirred something within me, a flicker of hope mixed with skepticism. I wanted to believe him, but I also knew that actions spoke louder than words. I needed to see if he was truly committed to making amends, or if he was simply trying to ease his own guilt. As the days passed, I found myself at a crossroads once again. I had spent so much time focusing on my own healing, but the thought of reconnecting with Jake lingered in my mind. I felt a pull towards him, a desire to understand what had gone wrong and whether we could rebuild our relationship. But I also felt a sense of self-preservation, a need to protect my heart from further pain. I decided to take a leap of faith and agree to meet Jake. It was a decision that filled me with both excitement and dread. I wanted to see him, to hear his voice in person, and to gauge whether the connection we once had could be rekindled. But I also feared that seeing him would reopen wounds that were still raw and tender. I spent days preparing for our meeting, mentally rehearsing what I would say, and trying to anticipate his responses. We agreed to meet at a park halfway between our cities, a place that held memories of our early days together. As I drove there, my heart raced with anticipation and anxiety. I replayed our last conversation in my mind, the hurt and betrayal still fresh. What would I say? Would I be able to look him in the eye without feeling the weight of his betrayal? When I arrived, I spotted him sitting on a bench, his head down, seemingly lost in thought. He looked up as I approached, and for a moment, time stood still. The familiar warmth of his smile tugged at my heart, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memories of pain. I took a deep breath and sat down across from him, the distance between us feeling both comforting and suffocating. "Hey," he said softly, his voice laced with uncertainty. "Hey," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he fidgeted with his hands. It was clear that he was just as nervous as I was. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've missed you," he said, his eyes searching mine for a sign of hope. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last talked." I nodded, my heart aching at the sincerity in his voice. "I've missed you too, but I need to know what you want, Jake. I can't go back to how things were without understanding why they fell apart in the first place." He took a deep breath, his expression shifting from uncertainty to determination. "I messed up. I let my loneliness get the best of me, and I didn't think about how my actions would affect you. I care about you more than I can express, and I want to make things right." His words stirred something within me, a flicker of hope mixed with skepticism. I wanted to believe him, but I also needed to protect my heart. "What about her?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "Are you still seeing her?" He hesitated, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "No, I ended things with her." I realized that I was trying to fill a void, but it only made things worse. "I want to focus on us, on what we had." The admission hit me like a wave, and I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that he had made a choice, but anger that it had taken him so long to realize what he truly wanted. "You hurt me, Jake." "I can't just forget that," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "I need to know that you're committed to making this work, that you're willing to put in the effort." "I am," he said earnestly, leaning forward. "I know I have a lot to prove, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to rebuild your trust, even if it takes time." As we talked, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the regret etched on his face. But I also felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. Could I truly forgive him? Could we rebuild what had been broken? The conversation flowed, and we shared our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. I found myself laughing at his jokes, reminiscing about the good times we had shared. But every laugh was tinged with the knowledge of what had transpired. I felt a mix of longing and caution, torn between the love I still felt for him and the pain of his betrayal. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, I knew we were at a crossroads. I had to make a choice, either to take a leap of faith and trust him again or to walk away and protect my heart. The thought of losing him felt unbearable, but the thought of being hurt again loomed large in my mind. "I need time," I finally said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to believe you, but I can't rush into this. I need to see that you're serious about making things right." He nodded, his expression a mix of understanding and disappointment. "I get it. I'll give you all the time you need. Just know that I'm here, and I'm willing to fight for us." As I sat there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I had taken a step towards healing, and while the path ahead was uncertain, I knew I had to prioritize my own well-being. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, but I also felt a flicker of hope for the future. In the weeks that followed our meeting, I focused on myself. I poured my energy into my studies, my art, and my friendships. I found solace in the creative process, using painting as a way to express the tumult of emotions swirling within me. Each stroke of the brush became a cathartic release, a way to channel my pain into something beautiful. I painted late into the night, losing myself in the colors and textures, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. Jake and I kept in touch, but I maintained the boundaries I had set. He respected my need for space, and I could sense his determination to prove himself. He would send me messages, sharing snippets of his day, and I found myself smiling at his attempts to connect. But I also felt a lingering hesitation, a fear of getting too close too soon. I needed to see if he was truly committed to making amends, or if he was simply trying to ease his own guilt. One evening, as I was painting, I received a message from him. He wanted to meet again, to talk about our future. My heart raced at the thought. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety, unsure of what to expect. I agreed to meet him at the same park, and as the day approached, I found myself replaying our last conversation in my mind. When I arrived, I spotted him sitting on the same bench, his expression a mix of hope and apprehension. As I approached, I could see the determination in his eyes. "Hey," he said, standing up to greet me. "Hey," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. We sat down, and I could feel the tension in the air. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he began, his voice steady. "I know I hurt you, and I can't change the past. But I want to show you that I'm serious about making things right." I nodded, my heart aching at the sincerity in his voice. "I appreciate that, Jake. But I need to know what that looks like for you. What are you willing to do to rebuild our trust?" He took a deep breath, his eyes locked onto mine. "I want to be transparent with you. I'll share my feelings, my struggles, and I'll make sure you're always in the loop. I want to be someone you can rely on, someone who puts you first." His words resonated with me, and I felt a flicker of hope. "That's a good start," I said, my voice steady. "But I also need to see that you're committed to this. It can't just be words, it has to be actions." "I understand," he replied, his expression earnest. "I'm willing to put in the work. I want to show you that I can be the partner you deserve." As we talked, I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the regret etched on his face. But I also felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. Could I truly forgive him? Could we rebuild what had been broken? The conversation flowed, and we shared our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. I found myself laughing at his jokes, reminiscing about the good times we had shared. But every laugh was tinged with the knowledge of what had transpired. I felt a mix of longing and caution, torn between the love I still felt for him and the pain of his betrayal. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, I knew we were at a crossroads. I had to make a choice, either to take a leap of faith and trust him again or to walk away and protect my heart. The thought of losing him felt unbearable, but the thought of being hurt again loomed large in my mind. "I need time," I finally said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to believe you, but I can't rush into this. I need to see that you're serious about making things right." He nodded, his expression a mix of understanding and disappointment. "I get it. I'll give you all the time you need. Just know that I'm here, and I'm willing to fight for us." As we parted ways that evening, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had taken a step towards healing, and while the path ahead was uncertain, I knew I had to prioritize my own well-being. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on